Good morning. I'm Kathy Chase, President of Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. We are a coalition of public health and safety and consumer organizations and insurance organizations and companies working to advance safer cars, safer drivers and passengers, and safer roads. Before we start, I would like to take a moment to honor Congressman Elijah Cummings, who died early this morning. Representative Cummings was a strong champion for safety, having long served on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Following a tragic school bus crash in Baltimore in 2016, Representative Cummings became a leader working to ensure the safety of passengers traveling to and from school. He was also an advocate for truck safety, fighting to keep bigger, heavier, more dangerous, and damaging trucks off of our nation's roads. On behalf of Advocates Board of Directors and staff, we extend our condolences to Representative Cummings' family, friends, staff, and constituents. He was a great man and will be greatly missed. We're here today to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the new car assessment program known as NCAP, one of the most successful auto safety assessment programs ever created. I am pleased to welcome a dynamic lineup of distinguished speakers, including Joan Claybrook, President Emeritus of Public Citizen, who, as head of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, also known as NHTSA, pioneered the effort to create NCAP in the 1970s. David Ward, President and CEO of Global NCAP, and Jack Gillis, Executive Director of the Consumer Federation of America and author of The Car Book. I'd also like to recognize two of Advocates' past presidents who have joined us today, Judy Stone and Jackie Gillen, and I would like to thank our tremendous Advocate staff for all of their efforts in putting together today's report and this press conference. After the speakers have concluded their remarks, we'll open up for questions from the media. All of the materials, including the speaker statements, handouts, and a recording of the webcast, will be available on our website, saferoads.org. Every day, more than 100 people are killed and thousands are injured in motor vehicle crashes in the U.S. The annual economic and societal price tag, largely borne by taxpayers, exceeds $800 billion. By any measure, motor vehicle crashes are a costly public health epidemic in desperate need of attention, activism, and action. NCAP was created with the goal of reducing this needless carnage by incentivizing auto manufacturers to build safer vehicles and encouraging consumers to buy them. Since the program's inception, advocates and our safety allies have successfully fended off attempts to undercut or underfund the program, while also supported legislative and regulatory efforts to enhance the program, including fighting for Stars on Cars in 2005, and providing NHTSA with expert analysis and recommendations on necessary changes. We are now at a moment in NCAP's history when ratings are stuck in the past and in urgent need of upgrading. When families walk into a car dealership, they expect the U.S. government has ensured the safety of motor vehicles. This includes providing adequate information about the vehicle's performance and reliability. Without action, NCAP's ratings will amount to little more than a participation award, rather than a motivating force toward excellence. Advanced safety features, such as automatic emergency braking, are not currently part of U.S. NCAP's ratings, despite clear and compelling evidence that these systems save lives. They also form the building blocks of driverless cars of the future. Auto manufacturers who are investing billions of dollars into automated vehicle R&D should embrace an upgraded U.S. NCAP rating system that will help demonstrate to the public that proven technology delivers safety. As we mark NCAP's 40th anniversary, we once again call upon members of Congress and NHTSA to take common sense steps to ensure that its ratings accurately distinguish the very safest cars from the rest. We are pleased to hear NHTSA's announcement yesterday that major changes will be proposed to NCAP in 2020. Actualizing our shared goal of ushering NCAP into the modern age is essential to better protect all road users. To achieve this objective, Advocates has co-authored a report with Joan Claybrook, and crafted a proposal that will revitalize U.S. NCAP, allowing the program to assume its former status as the gold standard in the world. Joan Claybrook is our next speaker, and she will give a high-level explanation of our specific recommendations. But before Joan speaks, I would like to thank her for her tireless dedication and unwavering leadership to make the road safer for all motorists. Joan has saved countless lives by not only creating NCAP, but also through her advocacy efforts on many, many, many safety advances. I'd like to welcome Joan.
Thank you, Kathy, so much. She didn't say how much I badger her day in and day out to do one thing after another to improve safety, and how willingly she is to do that. And also, of course, Jackie Gillen, longtime president of Advocates, and Judy Stone. So we've been a team for some time, and it looks like we continue to be so. I'd also like to thank Peter Kurdak, who was a major force in getting this report done and finished, and Sean Kildare, who's not here. He's housed in Chicago, but he helps us all the time. And Allison Kennedy, who's in the front, who's like the most incredible technical person with computers that I've ever met. I wish I could just sort of extract that and put that in my own brain. So good morning. From 1977 to 1981, I served as administrator of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, appointed by Jimmy Carter. This relatively new agency had the monumental task of improving and overseeing safety and fuel economy of motor vehicles. This mission was especially urgent as nearly 50,000 people were being killed in motor vehicle crashes annually at that time. Luckily, it's gone down, but not enough. Shortly after assuming office, I became concerned about the differential between highway speeds and the 30-mile-an-hour test in NHTSA's new airbag rule that had recently been issued. I also learned that auto companies were testing their vehicles at insufficient speeds to assure that all vehicles produced with met the federal safety standards. I learned that because I talked to the president of General Motors, Pete Estes, who called me on another matter, and I asked him at what speed they crash tested their vehicles to pass the 30-mile-an-hour standard. And he said 31 miles an hour, which obviously was not enough, because you're not going to have, for all of the production, you're not going to have all of them pass if you only tested at 31. We therefore decided to challenge the auto companies by providing consumers for the first time with information about the safety performance of new cars beyond the requirements in the federal safety standards. We conducted these tests at 35 miles an hour, which was 5 miles an hour above the standard requirement in the airbag rule. And we named this new idea the New Car Assessment Program, now known as NCAP. This important tool has provided car buyers with critical safety information. And 40 years later, the program has been emulated across the world in Australia, China, Europe, Japan, Korea, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. And others are being considered in Africa and India. And we accredit David Ward with, who is going to speak after me, with being the promoter of many of these across the world. Underpinning the success of NCAP is the reality that safety sells. NCAP reports were wildly popular with the public, and automakers were quick to take notice. When I went on the Donahue show in 1980 to promote the program, and this new thing called the car book, which Jack Gillis, who's the final speaker, put together for NHTSA. This was the first car book back in 1980. And what it did was shocking. It told the public how these cars performed by size of car. And they could look here and see the results of the crash tests. And it was just amazing. And Consumer Reports shortly thereafter when we release this information, put it in their magazines so that the public had pretty good access to it. But the most amazing thing that happened was that when we offered it free of charge to the Donahue audience, 450,000 people requested copies, and we were completely overwhelmed, and we had to go rush to do additional printings to get it out. And in the meantime, Ronald Reagan became president, and it wasn't clear that he was going to pay for the extra car books that we had promoted so effectively on the Donahue Show. But luckily, that worked out, and they did. In 2005, the release of the NCAP information was brought to another level with the creation of something called stars on cars, which is having stars as the indicator of how well these cars were doing. The original one was a pass-fail, which the auto industry just hated. And so eventually they lobbied to get it to be something a little bit more gentle, and that's stars on cars. And so that visually demonstrates the safety ratings on the showroom price sticker window. That was another major achievement for which I credit Jackie Gillen and Mike DeWine. She lobbied Senator Mike DeWine, and he loved the idea of getting this information into the hands of consumers immediately. And so rather than have a lot of difficulty in persuading dealers to make it available, we passed, with Mike DeWine's help, passed a law that puts the information on the window sticker of the price window sticker that is in every car. And so it's available on every single car, the information from the NCAP program. And that's been incredibly effective. And we're lobbying David Ward to try and get other countries to do the same thing, because it is a really effective communication to the public. Unfortunately, after that improvement, the US NCAP, and even before that, has not kept up with important advances in vehicle safety, nor with what's happened across the world in these other programs. And a lot of what our report does, that we're releasing today, there are other countries that are doing it, and they're all listed in the appendix about what they're doing. So you can see for every country how well they're doing. This program, as I said, is a mere shell of its former self. And that means it's easily manipulated by the automakers seeking the 5-star rating, the top rating, which is nearly irrelevant today because in the United States, because of a reliance on outdated metrics and insufficient types of tests. And as a result, consumers are ill-served by a program that was at one time an invaluable source of safety information. So today we're So today we're releasing this research paper, NCAP at 40, Time to Return to Excellence, that highlights serious deficiencies and outlines proposed actions to improve the program and restore it to its original significance. We are here this morning on Capitol Hill urging Congress and NHTSA to swiftly act on these recommendations, which include the following items to the NCAP ratings. 1, boosting the pre-crash performance, incorporating crash avoidance technologies such as automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, blind spot detection. This is one of the most exciting developments in auto safety in many years, because while the auto industry used to say the nut behind the wheel is the cause of auto crashes, it can't say that anymore because it has the ability to protect the nut behind the wheel, as they used to call us, and actually have technology prevent crashes. That's an amazing development. It used to be just in the crash that you had the technology protecting you. Now it's before the crash, the pre-crash, the crash avoidance. Second, modernizing and enhancing the crash tests that we have. Third, augmenting safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and other road users. Europe is far, and Japan are far advanced beyond us in terms of achieving that. They do have more pedestrian deaths and crashes than we do, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't, in the United States, do the same thing. And then adding a silver rating for older motorists like me, who have silver hair and are a little bit older, and make sure that they are able to be protected in crashes. And then improving access to the NCAP ratings. Not only will this revitalization of NCAP provide better information to consumers, it will also incentivize manufacturers to make their cars safer, which is what has happened from the very beginning of this program. I remember meeting with the Japanese manufacturers in 1979 and telling them that we were crash testing their cars and we were going to release the information to the public. And there was a state of complete shock that we were going to do such a dastardly thing. And so the good side of that was that the manufacturers immediately went and improved the safety of their cars, so that when within a year or two of our releasing these initial NCAP results, their cars were much better. Yesterday, upon hearing that we were releasing this report, because Kathy Chase contacted NHTSA, NHTSA released a statement indicating the agency plans to propose changes to NCAP in 2020. And this is most welcome news. The devil, of course, is in the details, and we urge NHTSA to ensure its proposed changes address the upgrades that I just mentioned, and that the proposal is followed by swift action to take effect in 2021. There's not a lot of lead time that's needed for a consumer information program as there is for a safety standard. And so we're really pushing hard for that. And we'll work with Congress to see if we can't get that implemented. And we will also be talking to NHTSA about actually doing some work on this. They did propose in 2015 and in 2018 some improvements, but they never acted on them. They never did anything. And so it's time to act. We're also going to be working with other partners through David Ward, who's founded Global NCAP, to get NCAP really into the 21st century. And I want to particularly thank David for his dedication and his tireless work to promote NCAP safety information and UN vehicle safety standards across the globe. He is the model of the energetic advocate, pushing one country after another to adopt NCAP and to educate the buying public. And I'd like to recognize the many contributions of Jack Gillis, who is our last speaker. He is the Executive Director of the Consumer Federation of America, and the late Clarence Sitlow, who were both instrumental in ensuring consumers have adequate safety information through the publication of the Car Book. After this version of the Car Book was published by NHTSA, the Reagan administration refused to publish it anymore. And so Jack left NHTSA and started publishing it privately. I think he almost expired the first year in trying to get it done, but luckily he survived, and we're now in the 39th edition of the Car Book. And it was Jack who helped to develop the first Car Book with crash test information with me at NHTSA. And I also want to commend the National Transportation Safety Board for calling attention to necessary upgrades in their work, investigating crashes and issuing recommendations. And finally, I want to thank Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety for hosting this event, for co-authoring the report, and for 30 years of incredible efforts to make our roads safer. Advocates is a very unique combination of consumer groups and insurance companies who support the work of the consumer groups, putting together proposals and pushing for adoption of standards to improve safety on our highways. As we mark the 4 decades of NCAP, it's vital to accelerate improvements so that we can once again boast that this top-notch 5-star program is advancing auto safety in the marketplace. And I want to thank you all for joining us today. And I would now like to ask David Ward to come forward and, with his beautiful British accent, and tell us about his work worldwide.
So, good morning, everybody. I'm really delighted and honoured to be here with Joan Claybrook, and very grateful to Advocates for Highway Safety for arranging this opportunity to celebrate a huge American contribution to road injury prevention. The winning formula for improved automotive safety has been the combination of mandatory standards and consumer information. And the first time this was systematically harnessed together was here in the USA when the administration of President Jimmy Carter, who I'm delighted to see still going strong at, I think, age 95, launched the first NCAP. In '79, NHTSA, led by Joan, began to publish crash test results at a higher level of stringency than required by federal standards, and the NCAP era began. It's now become a worldwide phenomenon, with NCAPs or similar testing programs now working in Australasia, in Africa, China, Europe, India, the Republic of Korea, Japan, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. And of course, here where it all started in the US, not just with US NCAP, but also with the work of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Over the last 40 years, the spread of NCAPs around the world have contributed hugely to making automobiles safer than ever before. They've added a powerful demand pull factor alongside the supply push of regulation. NCAPs have stimulated manufacturers to offer models for sale that far exceed mandated standards, and they've encouraged consumers to buy the safest cars they can afford. As Joan said very powerfully, they show that safety sells. All involved at NHTSA in the launch of the US NCAP can be justifiably proud that their initiative back in 1979 has now been replicated across the globe. NCAP, born in the USA, has proved to be a life-saving gift to the world that keeps on giving. At that point, we should cue in Bruce Springsteen, I suppose. But, my role with NCAPs began 25 years ago when I was involved in a campaign to upgrade European Union crash test standards and also to launch a Euro NCAP. This culminated in the first crash test results in 1997, and a year later, the implementation of new regulatory standards for front and side impact. At that time, late 1990s, around 45,000 people every year were being killed across the EU. Today, although it's still unacceptably high, that figure is now 25,000 people dying in road crashes, and it's now the safest road network in the world. Vehicle occupant deaths are now half what they were. Of course, it's not only attributed to improved vehicles, other factors too, but the largest single contributor to this huge improvement in European road safety has been improved vehicle safety. And in 2017, it was estimated that the combination of EU legislation and Euro NCAP ratings have saved around 78,000 lives. But Euro NCAP was not satisfied with that, and it's updating its test protocols basically every 5 years. And this process of continuous evolution has made Euro NCAP the world's most advanced consumer test program. I'm very pleased, actually, we've got Richard Schramm here, who's the technical director of Euro NCAP. So any of you want to ask tough questions of what their protocols include, Richard is the guy to talk to. In 2011, I was very proud to launch the Global New Car Assessment Program, which serves as a platform for consumer testing worldwide. I've privileged to see the NCAP effect work in all the world's major emerging markets. And once again, the basic formula of success has worked everywhere to improve vehicle safety. Latin NCAP, for example, began in 2010, and at that time, all of the region's best-selling cars scored 0 stars. That meant that the cars would fail either US or EU crash test standards. Last month, Latin NCAP released a 5-star rating for the region's current bestseller, which is called the Chevrolet Onyx, previously a 0-star car. The model got 5 stars for occupant protection, 5 stars for child protection, and it even got a special award for meeting pedestrian protection standards that are not yet applied in the US of A. And I think that's an extraordinary tribute to the dynamic success of Latin NCAP, turning around the performance in that region and encouraging General Motors to transform the level of safety that they're now meeting in that region, well above any kind of regulatory standards. It's an extraordinary story. More recently, I've been involved in our Safer Cars for India initiative, which is a kind of pilot project to establish a permanent Indian NCAP, which is now the 5th largest vehicle producing country in the world. Our first test results in 2014, again, nearly all the cars tested were 0. That means failing basic federal motor vehicle crash tests and equivalent EU ones. Last December, after we've completed around 30 different model tests, we were delighted to award India's first ever 5-star car to a Tata Nexon, a vehicle entirely engineered, designed and produced in India. So that shows also the extraordinary skills capacity that's growing in these emerging markets. And in parallel, the Indian government has introduced new crash test standards for front, side, impact, and for pedestrian protection. I might also mention for ABS in motorcycles. And in fact, their crash worthiness requirements now in India are tougher than in the US because they include pedestrian protection. I also might mention again that the US has not yet applied ABS in motorcycles. So India is on the march when it comes to safety. Of course, they need to. They have the highest number per capita road deaths in the world, but they're acting both legislatively and in consumer testing. These examples show the power of the NCAP model as a dynamic agent for change, building a market for safety across the world. And I'd just like to mention one other really interesting story is ASEAN NCAP, which was set up in 2012. And actually, when we inaugurated in 2012 their crash lab in Malacca, Joan was a guest of honor, and it was wonderful to see a new crash lab in Malaysia serving the Southeast Asian region. And this pace of innovation is extraordinary. ASEAN NCAPs now uprating their test protocols to include a blind spot detection system for motorcycles. In Southeast Asia, two-wheeler crashes are the major problem, but interaction with vehicles is huge and blind spot is huge. And what it shows is that NCAPs, new NCAPs, relatively infant NCAPs, are now introducing brand new test procedures, brand new, innovating in brand new technology. So really it's an unstoppable phenomenon to see how these test programs evolve. But I'd like to highlight three principal characteristics of NCAPs that I think explain their effectiveness and their success. Firstly, NCAPs must have strong operational independence, integrity, and outreach. NCAPs work because they're trusted by the car buying public. Of course, they must offer a level playing field to the manufacturers who are competing against each other to demonstrate their engineering skills and product safe performance. So that's an absolutely essential prerequisite for effective NCAPs. In addition, they must be based on sound evidence and technology assessment, so the ratings positively influence real-world crash risks and outcomes. And they need to exploit the growth of online media and find new ways to reach the car-buying public. All of this requires secure funding and continuous research capabilities. Secondly, NCAP should always promote best available technologies. They work best when they encourage both innovation and real-world deployment by stretching manufacturer performance. NCAPs are not about minimum standards. They're not a de facto regulatory system. And that is why they can and should include tests that are above and beyond regulation, maybe even well in advance of the potential for regulation. And that's why they must be regularly updated to keep pace with technological development. Now, this will become more challenging and even more important as we transition to a world of advanced driver systems, semi-autonomous vehicles, and so on. Now, as a rule of thumb, if an NCAP finds that most of its test models score 5 stars, then really that's a very powerful indicator that the ratings are too easy and they need upward revision. Thirdly, it's really essential to maintain a constructive dialogue with the manufacturers, with the OEMs. But I would like to make this important caveat. OEM associations, not the manufacturers, but the OEM associations, have a very poor record of negative influence on NCAPs. Both when manufacturers do well or poorly in NCAP tests, the dialogue that follows with the manufacturers is enormously valuable. It empowers both engineers and those responsible for brand values to strive to do better. And we've seen that process over and over again. I can mention, for instance, the Tata Nexon. When we first tested cars in India, we tested the Tata Nano, very much a 0-star car, but it was been a fantastic process of constructive engagement to help Tata reach a first 5-star car in India. But unfortunately, this positive dynamic is far too often entirely absent at the level of OEM associations. Whilst they try to represent the industry on NCAP matters, they are never truly representative of the industry and the capabilities of automakers. Unfortunately, they always move at the speed of their least competitive member. They have to work collegiately. They have to set policies that they all commonly agree on. And so what that means is, in order to get an agreement, usually by consensus, they're going to only adopt recommendations or policies that reflect the least capable of their members. And that's why they have so often proved to be a drag anchor on NCAPs around the world. And I think that is something that has to change. When Euro NCAP was set up in 1996-97, ASEA, the European Car Manufacturers Association, opposed it, lobbied against it, tried to block funding. organised a rival press event at the launch to try and discredit the results. And I'm afraid that kind of practice I've seen again and again in all of the emerging markets that we work in. And I really do think we've got to get beyond this, which is why my advice to governments and legislators: talk to individual manufacturers bilaterally. Do not respond to the inevitable downgrading proposals or delaying proposals that industry associations will come up with. Now, as we celebrate its 40 years, I hope that US NCAP can again show the same mold-breaking power that it did in 1979. As other NCAPs around the world become increasingly sophisticated, it will surely be desirable for the tradition of US leadership in the automotive industry to be demonstrated once again. Back in 2015, I can say the NCAP community around the world was very encouraged to see the proposed update then of US NCAP. And I think we all hope, we're very pleased to hear, as of yesterday, that there's going to be a new proposal. I think we look forward and welcome that very much. For it's only by continuous improvement that any NCAP maintains its effectiveness. And I think that's the way to make US NCAP great again. I'd like to finish, it's a popular phrase I'm told, right? I just want to finish with a little, you've got a comparison here, but I can't resist showing this. This chart here, produced by an organization called CARS, that is, I'm very proud of this chart because there's a number of these here are kind of NCAPs that we've helped produce, but it's a comparative chart of all the NCAPs, all the level of stringency. I'm going to leave it on the desk. You can peruse it. And Richard's the kind of guy who can actually explain it in detail. But it does show very powerfully the extraordinary innovation and growth of NCAPs around the world, and it shows how advanced they've become. And in a way, I hope this is reading material for our colleagues in NHTSA, because it shows what else is going on around the world. But with that, thank you very much. I'll put this on the table so you can peruse the chart. And with that, I'm really delighted to welcome Jack Gillis, who, as everyone knows, was the author of the very first car book. Jack, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Jack Gillis. I'm Executive Director of the Consumer Federation of America. We are made up of over 250 state, local, and national organizations. Also the author of the car book, which was published by the U.S. Department of Transportation, and now, thankfully, published by the Center for Auto Safety under the direction of the great Jason Levine, who has managed to keep the book alive. And as we acknowledge the 40th anniversary of this NCAP program, under Jason's direction, we are preparing the 40th edition of the car book. You can now get the car book online at autosafety.org. Just for the record, when I did the car book for Joan, I was only 10 years old. I had a full head of hair, and that was the truth. Few federal agencies have greater impact on the public and personal health of Americans than the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and few programs have done more to improve vehicle safety than NHTSA's crash test program. By simply publishing these test results, which we set out to do 40 years ago, we were finally able to get the manufacturers to compete on safety performance. That's the good news. The bad news is that a major overhaul of the NCAP testing program is long overdue. The program has stalled in neutral. The star rating system has resulted in starflation, with most vehicles getting virtually the same star rating. That has essentially taken away the consumer's ability to make an informed choice and separate the lemons from the peaches, the whole purpose of the NCAP program. NCAP needs a major overhaul to reinvigorate competition on occupant protection and significantly improve vehicle safety. And why is this so important? Because before today is over, there will be over 17,000 motor vehicle crashes in the U.S., resulting in over 100 deaths and more than 7,500 injuries. And while each year the economic cost is in the billions, the cost in personal tragedy is immeasurable. Why is NCAP so important? because combined with simple disclosure, the crash tests have enabled the American consumer to vote with their dollars for better performing, safer vehicles. Prior to NCAP, consumers had no idea which vehicles would protect them in a crash. And because we had no ability to make purchase decisions based on crash test performance, manufacturers had no incentive to improve their vehicles. By providing consumers with the ability to differentiate between the safety performance of vehicles, they became far safer than they were before the program began. Tragically, because the program has stalled, most vehicles now get the same star rating. The tremendous market power of NCAP has been neutered. It is important to remember that NCAP survived a long history of attacks by the car companies, claiming that it was inaccurate, ineffective, and misleading. Thankfully, due to the strong support by safety advocates, including Joan Claybrook, Clarence Stitlow, and the Center for Auto Safety, its popularity with the American public has continued. The program has survived, and those car makers who fought the program have come around. Today, few ads fail to mention the now too common 5-star ratings. That is the power of what I call regulation by information. By giving consumers access to comparative information on crash test performance, car makers were forced to improve the safety and performance of their vehicles. Sadly, this initially wonderful program has lost its ability to bring about safety improvements. While there have been notable improvements in the program during the past decades, we're essentially testing vehicles the same way we did 40 years ago. First and foremost, NHTSA needs to address starflation. NHTSA's star system today does little to differentiate the performance of vehicles because the majority of vehicles now get the same rating. This has essentially neutered the consumer's ability to differentiate the best performers from the worst. That's why in the car book we use the very same crash test data generated by NHTSA to separate performance on a scale of 1 to 10, so consumers can identify the truly top performers. NHTSA needs to adopt such a system, as well as increase the speed at which the tests are conducted. We believe that a program that challenges the manufacturer to post the highest speed at which their vehicle will pass an updated test protocol would set competition for safety on fire. Vehicle safety design and technology is light years ahead of the current crash test program. NHTSA must move forward to develop new and more sophisticated methods of measuring a vehicle's ability to protect us in a crash and combine that effort with a simple and easily comparable method of presenting those results to the American car buyer. NCAP has proven that regulation by information works, but today the program is stalled in neutral and does little to help consumers make the safest choice possible. NCAP needs to keep up with the rest of the world, not only to ensure that Americans have access to the safest cars in the world, but also to keep American vehicles globally competitive. Doing so and publishing differentiated competitive test results will result in a giant leap forward in the safety of American cars and a significant reduction in the death and injury caused by products that most of us depend on every single day. So thank you very much, and with that, Kathy, you're opening the floor to questions.
Yes. Does any member of the press have any questions? No? Okay. Yes.
So you guys noted that in 2015 NHTSA proposed some improvements. Why, in your view, did that package stall, and what can you do to get it done in the U.S. This time around?
We had another concern with the proposal in 2015, other than it stalled. The details that were provided in that proposal were not quite significant. There wasn't enough meat on the bones. So we'd like to see, moving forward, even more improvements that were proposed in 2015. Not just what that offering was, but much more substantive so that the U.S. can catch up to what's happening in Euro, NCAP, and other countries around the world. And I'd like to invite any other speakers to add to my comments.
Excuse me, we were very disappointed that nothing happened to the 2015 proposal. The NHTSA administrator at the time was very enthusiastic about it, and then was not allowed through OMB, the Office of Management and Budget in the White House, to move forward with it. And so it was essentially quashed by the Obama administration. And we were really disturbed because we had, the safety advocates had supported moving forward with the 2015 proposals. And in the course of that process, what happens is that you get meat on the bones, more meat on the bones. And I think advocates submitted comments. I think the Center for Auto Safety submitted comments. So there was a lot of push from our side. Again, in 2018, lesser proposals with less meat on the bones came forward out of NHTSA, and nothing ever happened to them either. And now NHTSA has said that in 2020 they're going to put out a new set of proposals. We don't know whether they're going to have a little bit of meat on the bones, no meat on the bones, a lot of meat on the bones, we don't know. One option is to try and get Congress involved again. Jackie Gillen and I worked endlessly to get safety provisions into legislation through advocates and public citizen and so on, because we didn't trust the administration to do it and get it done. And I think maybe that's time, again, to try and get Congress to take this issue up.
Yes, please.
Do we need to come here?
Yeah, you do.
You do, actually.
Just
Yeah.
one additional, you heard my little sort of, hopefully not too undiplomatic complaint about the role of industry associations, but there's a sort of evidence one, is this attached to the document here, which was the submission sent on November the 10th, 2016, to the Trump transition by Mitch Bainwell from the Auto Alliance. And I think this letter was about as badly thought through as when industry CEOs flew here in private jets when they were trying to negotiate a bailout. This letter called for a rollback on kind of everything. And of course, it's a different subject, but it's caused the total fiasco of the fuel economy problems, where the rollback has meant it's pitched federal government versus California. And the irony is the members of this association have now basically sided with California. So I don't know what they thought they were doing, allowing Mitch Bainwell to write a letter like this. But the tragedy is that the NCAP process got caught up in the rollback. And I don't understand this. NCAP is not a mandatory regulatory system. It's about market incentives. You can be a purebred free marketeer who fundamentally disagrees with government regulation, but you should believe in information for consumers. If you're a real, true-born believer in free markets, you want an empowered, knowledgeable free market. So anyone who's a rampant, born-again free marketeer should back NCAPs. Why the industry associations, not just here but everywhere, tend to try and hold back NCAPs is just perplexing to me. It helps them sell better products to the public. And you'd have thought, as entrepreneurs, that's what they want to do. And so this is evidence one of my case against industry associations. Thank you. Sorry.
I think there's one very important thing that we need to keep in mind, and that is the extraordinary power of the American automobile industry. And the American automobile industry has captivated Congress and has prevented the regulatory agencies from doing their job. In addition, I will take one exception to what David said. These free marketers like marketing, but they want to control the message. Yeah. And with the NCAP program, they can't control the message, and they're afraid of it. They're afraid of revising the standards. They're afraid of improving the standards, just like they were afraid of the standards when they were first issued. And when Joan decided to up the ante and crash the cars at 35 miles per hour. One of the things that Joan alluded to, which we hope to take advantage of, is that when the Japanese manufacturers realized that this program was going to stay in place, they went back to the drawing board, improved the safety of the performance of their vehicles, while GM, Ford, and Chrysler were spending millions of dollars trying to fight the publication of these results. The Japanese better understood the needs of the American public than the Detroit manufacturers. So hopefully going forward, we will find manufacturers who, like David, are true free marketers who want to expose the fact that their products are better than their competitors' products and will jump on board with a new and invigorated NCAP program.
I'd just like to close out this conversation by saying that's why I think the American industry went bankrupt, because it was no, 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 don't fix, and the other vehicles manufactured across the world outcompeted them, and I hope they've learned their lesson. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.